Hi, my name is Ms. Michaela Smart, and I'm an English education student at Ball State. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about detail writing. So you may be wondering, what is detail writing? Well, detail writing is using colorful words to place a reader in a scene or situation, and using sensory words to allow a reader to feel what the character or narrator is experiencing. And we're going to talk a little bit about sensory words later on. So, why add detail to your writing? Detail writing will help readers make a movie in their heads while they read, and it's going to make them a lot more interested in reading your story if they can feel what the narrator or characters are trying to convey. So, you can tell your readers that a character is happy or irritated or sad, and they're going to know what that means, but without detail writing, they're not really going to be able to feel it and see it in their minds. Now, let's take a look at an example of good detail writing. This is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Mr. Dursley was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he had a very large mustache. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde, and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent much of her time craning over garden fences spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion, there was no finer boy anywhere. So now we can look at the good detail words that J.K. Rowling uses in this passage. So we have big and beefy. He also has hardly any neck. So that describes what he looks like. So now we have a good image in our head of what to think of Mr. Dursley. Also, very large mustache. Miss Dursley, who was thin and blonde, and having nearly the usual twice amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent much of her time craning over garden fences, really tells us, although it's kind of a joke, it really tells us what kind of person she is by talking about how she cranes over necks. We know that she's a little bit of a nib nose. Our next example is A Series of Unfortunate Events, The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. The three Baudelaire children lived with their parents in an enormous mansion at the heart of a dirty and busy city, and occasionally their parents gave them permissions to take a rickety trolley. The word rickety, you probably know, means unsteady or likely to collapse, alone to the seashore, where they would spend the days as a sort of vacation as long as they were home for dinner. This particular morning was gray and cloudy, which didn't bother the Baudelaire youngsters a bit. So let's take a look at the detail words that Lemony Snicket uses. We have enormous for enormous mansion. We have heart of a dirty and busy city. There's rickety trolley. And then we also have gray and cloudy. So because of these words, we know that he makes a picture for us so that we know what to see in our heads. If you read this passage, you imagine an enormous mansion at the heart of a dirty and busy city and the gray and cloudy beach and the rickety trolley. Because Lemony Snicket uses such descriptive language, we can really imagine the scene. If he had said the children lived in a big house in a town and they took a train to the beach, that's not nearly as interesting as this passage that actually makes the movie in our heads that we talked about in the beginning of this video. As we said at the beginning of this video, sensory words are a part of detail writing that help the reader experience the scene with the narrator or the character. So let's take a look at this infographic to see what sensory words are and what they can do for your writing. So here we have the 5 senses: sound, sight, touching/feeling, and taste and smell. Next to these symbols, we have words that these senses can utilize. Now, it's important to note that some descriptive words can be utilized by more than one sense. For example, something can taste sweet, but it can also smell sweet. You can look at this chart and look at the symbols and ask yourself, do I have sound words? Do I have sight words? Does my character smell anything in this scene? Using this infographic will really help you think about your writing and if you've included sensory details. Next, let's look at some sentences before and after they've had sensory detail added to them. So here we have 3 sentences with very vague descriptions. She walked to class, he was tall, and she smelled bad. We know what tall is and we know what bad is, but these are so vague, there's no way that we can imagine what this person is trying to actually tell us. So let's add some detail to these. I'm going to say, she dragged her feet to math class, with pressure rising in her chest as she thought about the exam that awaited her. Now, with all of this detail in the sentence, now we can really think about we can really see what she's doing as she's thinking, as she's walking to math class. She's dragging her feet because she doesn't want to take this math test. And that shows us that she's either anxious or nervous, and she is just dreading this test that she has to go to. Okay, now for the next one we have, he was tall. This is very, very vague, and there are lots of different ways we can think of tall, so that's not a good description for us to imagine how tall he is. So let's say he towered over the other kids like a giraffe, and his legs were so long that we had to crane our necks to be able to say hello. Now that is a good description. We can think about how tall this kid has to be that someone has to crane their neck just to say hello, and we can think about how tall a giraffe is, and so he's being compared to this. That tells us that he is really, really, really tall. Our next one is, she smelled bad. Once again, this is very vague, and there is no detail to tell us what exactly smelled bad means. So let's say she smelled like she had taken a bubble bath in rotten eggs. That tells us that she smells really bad. And it's like I said, it's more interesting to read. It's more interesting to read if she had taken a bubble bath in rotten eggs. That kind of puts a humorous picture in our heads. Once again, that helps with the movie that we need to have our readers need to have playing in their heads. All right, now we're going to do a little activity. First, we're going to write 5 sentences containing at least one sensory detail. And then we're going to underline the sensory words that we utilized in our sentences and write down what sensory detail they're referring to. After that, we're going to share our sentences with each other and see what we came up with. You're going to have about 5 minutes to write your sentences and about 5 minutes to share your sentences with each other. For my example, I wrote, the powerful aroma of the lunchroom filled my nostrils as I thought about what was for lunch today, pizza. So, right, you can see that I've underlined powerful aroma, and then under that I've put powerful aroma equals smell. So I've underlined what sensory word I used, and then I wrote down what sensory detail it's referring to. Alright, so I brought this infographic back so you guys can look at it while you write your sentences. So go ahead and pause it and feel free to refer back to it whenever you need to. I hope this video has helped you build some new skills in detail writing. Thank you for watching and have a great day.